Hey guys, it's Warren Younger here from Gold Kenny Gaming here with Luke Rioux from our second place SpringFest Cali 2023 performance in Weiss Schwarz, and he was on Fujimi, so definitely got to get his spicy list, and you go ahead and take it away, man.
Awesome. Yeah, event was really fun. We really weren't expecting to even top 3, let alone top 8ing would be just kind of nice in itself. And then next thing you know, we found ourselves in finals. Sadly didn't clutch it out, but lost to some really good opponents, so that's just how it is. Start off is pretty much we have our climaxes here. We're just playing 8 standby. That's all the deck ever is. But we do run a lot of fun tech in it, and I think the real strength in the deck is where the level 0s lie. You don't have to ever actually really use your climax combos either. Like your 0 climax combo is a restander, pretty specific. I never used it once in tournament. And your level 3 is just an extra power buffer. I might have used it once or twice, and if I did, it probably didn't really matter that much. But yeah, so we'll kind of just start off with the 0s right now, because that's really the only thing to talk about. And we'll go there. So our very first 4 set of 0s that we're going to run are going to be this yellow right here. It's a 2K character, and on play you mill 2 cards. If there's a climax, it'll get +2 soul. So it's a 3 soul swinger, and on swing, it's just buff another character to 1K. The strength that Fujimi has is getting really big power and a lot of soul. So any control decks that are minus soul like Sora's just don't have a matchup against this. It's just non-existent. When my level 0s can swing for 3 souls, it's really nice. It gives you good mill power. Standbys love that. It's good if you don't hit a climax, because you don't have climax out, you're going to trigger your standbys. Standbys love to trigger climaxes. But if you do hit one, you're just plussing soul. Obviously in the earlier of the game, they still have all 8 climaxes in probably if they didn't get any in Mulligan. So you might not be able to hit a 3 or even a 4 swing if you're swinging open lane, 5 swing if you're triggering, but you're also making them cancel at 0, which isn't the best for them. Moving on from that card, we're going to run our next 4 of, and this one's definitely been getting a lot of talk about of why I'm running it in the first place. It's a green, first of all, and that'll be important for our level 3, but it's just a 500, but on place of stage, you minus 3k power to if there is just 1 solo character on the enemy's opponent, or the enemy's stage, and that's pretty much enough to just knock anything out to waiting room. There are a few 3/5s that are the problem, but we run a lot of buffers as 0s, so we have this one to buff it 1k to get over, or we can just crash if we really wanted to. And it has a nice effect that on swing, if you only have 1 or less other characters, you can mill top card, and if it's another 0, you'll place it in the backstage. Getting any kind of just free swinger in the back, so even if we don't have a good target for it, isn't that bad, because it's just another free swing, so it's basically just having an extra hand size. It's really strong. It works on level 1 really well, because you don't use the first effect, but you'll use the second effect, and if you go second, you get to use that bounce back effect, and it's really nice. So pairing with that card, to make sure that you can try to get your best chances, is this one right here. This is probably the best card I ran in the entire deck. It's really, really simple. You place it on stage, top check, top card, either leave it or put it in waiting room. You get to see if it's a 0, you're probably going to leave it to pair it with this girl. If it's a climax and you don't have a target, you get to pitch it, or if you kind of want bigger swings, you can decide what triggers you get. Just additional milling power, so we already have 3 cards that'll mill. Not a lot of cards, but you got to choose almost what you want to mill or when you get to mill. The other effect is just on standby play. You just bounce it back to hand and plus a soul somewhere. It's really nice, again, in the later stages of the game, you get to control how much soul you're swinging. Sometimes you know that your opponent's not very compressed and you want to swing a 4 or a 5, and you honestly will stick it a lot of the time. Really nice to have bounce back as well in your back rows when you're playing standby, because you'll always just kind of have full board and also keep hand size. So definitely the 3 staples of my 0s right there. And then you're going to have your very generic 0s that you'll see every Fujimi list run. I'm running only 2 of the Brainstorm, which is going to be the climax combo. It's pretty rough because it doesn't work on turn 1. So if you pay 1 stock and you standby out the level 1 that goes with this, you just get to restand it. So kind of like how Quince does, but you just have to pay a stock. But it doesn't work on level 1 or first turn. And then second turn, usually you're either just waiting to get to level 1 to standby out a level 2 instead. So you don't really use it, but it's just a standard K1 rest brainstorm salvage. Extra milling power. Again, you never hate to see a climax when you're milling, and you never really hate to not see a climax. So only running 2 of those. And then we're going to be running 1 of this, just a super simple pay 3 stock swapper. That's just about it. And then lastly is the staple that everyone knows. It's a very awesome kind of push effect of just gives 500 power to every turn. So again, with the 500 green that you're running, you're usually going to get over everything because nothing's going to be 4K. And on climax play, you get to put top card of deck into clock, which again, you're going to know what that card is by playing the other one. And look it up to top 4 and choose 1 level 1 or higher card. It is an errata. It says character, but if you do want your specific events, you can grab that as well. Yeah, it's just really strong. You get it better hand size. It's decent to have in the back row, and swinging with it on that turn is usually fine. So every single 0 that we play except our 1 of gives us really good milling power for standby. There was not a single game that I had in my 10 matches where I couldn't find my targets early or anything like that. And I was always pretty much winning in the early game. I would say that Hololive truly has the best level 0 in my eyes. They just have too much plussers that it's really hard to deal with. You have a lot of them that on waiting room effects, unless you're playing specific tech. Like I know some level 0 bombs or stock bombs or clock bombs, and that's definitely really good against them. But Fujimi's too old for that. But we make do with what we got. So we do run 19 level 0s as well on the deck, which is more than usual. But again, I feel like a genuine part of Weiss is if you can establish good base at level 0, your level 1, 2, 3 becomes much easier to achieve right there. So moving on to level 1s, we don't play many of them. We're going to play 1 of this. It has 3 different effects. They're all rest effects. Your first one is just resting and buffing something up 2500, so pretty big buff if you're ever needing it in your level 1 stage and you're facing like something like Mushoku or other standbys that are like kind of getting over. It's really easy to get your level 1s or even some 0s if you have other buffers to get over those. It's a pitch 1 card to bounce a level 0 or a cost 0 or lower to bottom deck. So if there's ever a problem card on the enemy's board that you need, you can do that. And then just a simple pay 2 rest to heal 1. And I honestly use that a lot. I don't really use my stock for anything. So I just kind of heal stall, even if I'm only at level 1. And I'll heal like 5 times in a game if I just keep this back there. And that's definitely the difference maker of winning and losing sometimes. Moving on to our next level 1, which is just the climax combo card with the level 0. Super simple, 500 per other character, so it's a 7/5 hand-on card. That's it. Pay 1 if you ever need to get a climax out of stock. Moving on to level 2s, this is going to be where we play 2 backups, and this is what I was going to tech out if I wanted to run the level 2 of map. So if I did, the main reason would be towards 7 Deadly Sins. The events pretty much just state, pick a trait on the battling character's card, and all of those characters will lose that trait. So for instance, when 7 Deadly Sins Escanor says if you have 4 other Sin characters, you get to do the 1 dings for 4 times. You'll play this card pretty much and say no one's a Sin character. You don't get to do that anymore. You'll still swing the 4. It's just not in the 1 ding. So
a question. So you say if you did, so you didn't play this card, right?
I did not play this card.
Why?
I think in testing, it was a bit difficult to see if it would even be worth it. I didn't play against 7 Deadly Sins until the tournament. The only card I ever read was Escanor. And I kind of thought, I was like, you know what, if I face it, we'll just kind of see how it goes. I never really had a problem with any of the meta decks with this Fujimi list. And I do run a different backup that does okay into it. I will say that if I played against more 7 Deadly Sins, I would have felt more regret for not running this. But I played against 2 7 Deadly Sins. I did lose both the matchups, but it was in Swiss and it didn't matter. So,
do you think the lack of blue in your deck would have made it hard to play?
It definitely would have. To mention that, if you would have played the 2 events, you would have to play these zeros as well, which are normally a really big staple in the deck, which is just on reverse. Look at top 3. Pitch a card, grab a character. So it's a good hand fixer if you have too many climaxes in. But I felt like I used to run this card in every single list that I played. And then eventually I just got to the point where like I feel like milling was worse with this card because I'm not plussing anything. And it felt extra bad when I'm milling a climax because I can't grab it at all. So I have to pick a character I probably don't want, and I'm pitching something that's probably decent in my hand. You would definitely get rid of the soul level 0 for this because it's the least important for what the deck is going to want to do after that. But instead, didn't run them, which I think is really good. I didn't run these because those matches didn't matter. And instead I ran anti-level, just simple pitch 2, 2500 backup, and a 3-5 pay 1 backup. 3-5 backup is really big. No one really knows that you have 3-5 backup. Usually the standard is just 3K, but I used it a couple times and it's pretty good. I was going to think of just not running backups at all because my board state never really matters. And usually the power levels are too big for people to get over anyways, but I ran it and it was pretty good, so I wouldn't really change it now. And moving on lastly is the staple level 2s that everyone runs. They're 6-5 base, they get to 11-5 on their own. That's pretty much it. With Agias in the back, you'll get to 14-5 base. Really hard for a lot of decks to deal with that. You really only got like Tokyo Avengers if they can perfect field, as well as Bang Dream. Choo-choos do really good against that. 3-5 backup with these though, I don't think anything's going to get over them.
Gotcha.
And now moving on to level 3s, we'll talk about the backup first.
How good was this?
This backup saved my ass probably half of the games. Probably 5 games where it actually saved it. I probably used it more than that. But it is a simple pay 4, pick 2 characters on your opponent's board, and they each get -2 soul, drop it into memory after. I don't know. This deck does not use stock for anything other than just playing cards raw from hand. So I just get to a point in a game where I have 12 stock at level 3, and if it's clean, I'm just super compressed. If not, I'm usually paid out by then. Like I have things I can use for stock if I really need to pay it out. But I can just sit with this in hand. You can get it from the level 0, that's the Rated, because it says level 1 higher card. On the text it says character, but you can grab this if you mill through it. Usually if I find it somewhere in the earlier stages of the game, I'll just hold on to it and keep it because I know I'm going to use it. Screws over a lot of decks, which is nice. Ran 2 of, never felt like I needed to run more or less. I saw it when I really needed to see it. The only times that it would mess me up was definitely in finals when I was just 1 stock short, but I wouldn't have been able to swing with a full board if I didn't use that stock. So really, really strong card. And moving on to the level 3s are pretty basic. I run 3 of the Agias. I didn't want to run 4 of because I don't think you need to. They're just buffers at the end of the day. But it's just a 1500 global, and climax combo is another 1500. If you play from hand, it's a heal. This is just your bread and butter standby. Once you hit level 2, you're just pitching Agias to throw in the waiting room. I'll even level with Agias sometimes, and I'll still hit both of them. It's not hard to get them in there. You have a lot of milling power still. For only running 3 of, that means I ran a 1 of, which was going to be this right here, which is the Kurumi Restander promo.
How good was this?
This is the only combo you have. This is your finisher because you don't run it anything else. I probably use this every single game. Again, you don't use stock, so looking at the hefty pay 5 pitch 2 to restand, the only expensive part is pitching 2. Honestly, I'll repeat this 3 times in a turn, because obviously you're going to generate 3 stock on a swing, so it's not too bad. But you also heal 1 when placed on stage. A big thing was that you only run 3 blue cards in total in this deck, and this is one of them. So you have to stand by it out, or you have to pair it with your Rioux. And Rioux is a lovely card that states that when you play from hand, you get to pick another card of equal level to you or lower, and play that from hand for free, while still getting the on-hand effects. So you'll still get the heal when playing this, but it also pluses a soul. Now that's not the best thing sometimes for this, because it's hard to have this have a lot of soul, because when you restand, you're probably swinging for like 7 or 8. So if someone's compressed, it doesn't really matter. You're kind of just milling their deck. But when you swing this 30 times in an entire tournament, one of those 8 swings hits eventually. And it's unlucky for the person it does, but that's just how it be. Sometimes you just got to hit them. And Rioux is just a very big buffer. She gets to 14k on swing for herself. So it's really hard for people to get over. So those are those level 3s. And then lastly, we're running 4 of these. For the longest time, I never saw anyone run this card. I don't understand why. It's an early play with 2 climaxes or less. Gets a 1k extra power just for having 2 other characters. So it's 11 base. It's real simple of you top check the top card of your deck. If it's a character, you get to clock quick for free on reverse. Again, pair that with your level 0 right here. Top check your card, make sure it's a character. If it's not, pitch it out. If you really still need a climax, you can still keep the climax up there and you can save this for another turn. This is still an early play. But that's why I'm liking to run the 4 greens as well in the deck, because those felt really good. I run 8 greens in total. I never once was whiffing color on this. And it just felt really smooth. This is your only other, again, quote unquote combo that you have, but a free clock kick early play is really nice.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, so awesome. Before we get into matchups, you mentioned earlier at the start of the deck profile that you kind of you didn't expect to top your top 3, but is that the actual full story? I mean, GCG did, win last year. Coming to this event, why Fujimi, and what was your expectations coming into the event?
So we won Ontario SpringFest, and I played Kaguya back in set 1 when it had the full ban list. I truly don't believe that Kaguya was very good. I think its late game was pretty good. I think it's just level 1 was pretty trash, and I think everyone agrees on that. And then after its 0 bans, it was just pretty mediocre, if not just below average. And I didn't like the deck. I love this set. That's the whole reason I bought it. But it felt nice to win. And then when we finished that, we were like, well, what do we do now? Do we just keep playing meta, what we think is the best? Keep playing. So we went to Houston, and I actually played Sora Control for Hololive, and we bubbled, and I think we got 10th or 9th in that event, which was a little unfortunate, but it's how it be. And then going into this next SpringFest, I kind of decided, like, look, Fujimi was the very first deck I ever bought. I didn't even buy a playset. It was a really bad deck list. But it had the staple of the 8 climaxes. And I was like, I'm just going to workshop this. There's no help online. There's no guides of what good Fujimi decks there are, because if there ever was, it was not ever backed up with results or anything. So for about like a year straight, I just play tested with nobody except my 2 teammates. I never went to locals, never nothing. And I would just sit there, either on my computer, just looking at cards. Deck logs doesn't even have every card, so I'd have to be on TCG Player or just the Weiss Schwarz deck list to look for pricing. Sometimes I can't even get cards, they're out of stock. So it's really rough, but I did that for about a year, and I finally came up with a list that I was happy enough with, and I said, you know what? If we top 8 this regional, I'll be more happy than winning the regional I did with Kaguya. And we got to top 8 pretty convincingly. And then once you're there, it's like, well, fuck, might as well just keep playing, I felt really happy. And then quarters go by, we advance, semis go by, we advance, and the next thing you know, you're in finals, and it's like, I was very content with top 8, but once you're there, I don't want to lose anymore. So it's definitely a bittersweet because it sucks to lose in finals. I think the best I could say is just like the opponents were really good. I don't think anyone really got unlucky. Not like the opponents got super lucky. I think it was just, in that match was the first time I think there was a deck limitation for me. Both me and my opponent and the judges like talked about our match and stuff and just like everything we could have done. Mainly the judges because they knew what both of our hands looked like. And it's just truly, it came down to one last swing that didn't connect because I was swinging too much soul on the restander. It was for a 6 swing. The guy had like probably 7 climaxes in like a 25 deck, so I'm not hitting that. And then the next turn he kills. If I did win my match, we would have won because one of our other teammates won their match. So it was probably the first time, but I feel like it's possible to win it. But in that case scenario, I needed to get a little lucky.
Sure. Let's talk about deck limitation, and you said you only felt that in the finals. Did you feel, so what about the other matches? Let's go through your matchups throughout the day.
Yeah. So I feel like I had actually a pretty hard matchup for the day for all 10 rounds. My only round that wasn't that hard was round 1. I played against Raise a Boring Girlfriend. I don't know what that deck does. He didn't play either his level 1 or 3 combo. I don't know. I just had a good board. I kind of won at 0. I don't know. He just lost. That's just how it be. But past that, I played against a Revengers player. This was my second time playing against Tokyo Revengers. I played Bunko at Anaheim's singles, and I went 5-2 with it. But I lost my the second to last round against a Revengers player because I put a little too much effort into my level 2 game. Not knowing that his cards could get to 16-5, and that's just deck knowledge right there. And then this time I didn't put as much effort into it, and I waited for my early plays in my level 3, and I won it pretty convincingly on just not putting too much resources into standing by those. So I won that round. Next round I played against Hololive, just the classic double level 3 combo, the green and red. Won that one as well. Nothing really crazy about that. Round 4 and 5 were the 2 7 Deadly Sins decks. The first one was a bit rough. Again, I didn't really know what the deck did. All I knew was Escanor. And I mean, it definitely gets carried by that. It's level 1, or level 0, 1, 2 aren't that great. I think it's 0 is okay. But yeah, you get to a point where you hit a spot in the game where you're at 2-6 and they're just gonna kill your ass. It does feel a little bad with the level 3 soul that I play because it is level 3 and Escanor loves to kill you when you're at 2-5. So I can't play it on the first Escanor that usually swings. So I'm taking my damage and then I gotta decide, do I want to waste this 4 stock just to -2 soul, because I'm probably still taking 2 of the damage from it, or even 5 if he swings face, then I'll be taking 3. So that's the only time in the first matchup where it felt a little rough. The other 7 Deadly Sins matchup, it did really good. It's just still a really good combo, and that's where I should have ran the level 2 blue event to stop that. So I did lose against both of those 7 Deadly Sins. Neither one of the losses mattered because we still top 8'd. But the next one was another Hololive. It was the Corone level 1 and Maureen level 3. So not the typical one, but that one was not that hard of a match either. Just pretty standard. I feel like a lot of the matches, it's really hard for people to ever deal with your board when you're playing Bunko. So either they're just kind of sacking stuff into you, and then eventually they just either run out of hand or they're running out of stock to save things. Well, you don't really care about your hand or stock as Bunko. As long as you have a board, you're just swinging. And then round 7, I lost to Quince deck, just super standard standby Quince, who we actually inevitably met again in finals. I wish I could have got the revenge. The finals match was probably the closest match I've just played in my life. Might just be because it was also a lot of high stakes. But yeah. And then going into top 8 cut, I actually played against another 7 Deadly Sins player, which was one that we played against earlier somewhere in the tournament. And I lost that one as well. But both my teammates clutched up, so yeah, that's definitely where my mistake lies, is not running that card. But if I could change it, I still wouldn't, because it never mattered.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
I think in singles, I probably would have teched for it. Specifically knowing that 7 Deadly Sins would be a very popular deck. But when you're in SpringFest, I think you can specifically tech for specific matchups to hope that you avoid them. It does suck that I had to face 3 7 Deadly Sins, but I think our B player also faced 3 or maybe even 4. So if I would have ran these blues and the event for 7 Deadly Sins, I can't guarantee that in another matchup I'll win because I'm running these. I might lose because I'm in these.
So essentially, you just went for a consistent deck against the field, knowing that it was less likely for you to verse 7 Deadly Sins, especially as a C player, than like in a singles tournament.
Yes. So singles, I'd probably do it just for the consistency, because it's really hard. Even in last Anaheim, they had a really shitty format where you could X1 and not make top 8. So even just losing one game is really rough. So I'd have to run this if I know that's almost a guaranteed loss. But in team format, I knew that I would play a more consistent deck and just say, look, if I face 7 Deadly Sins, I might beat them. We'll see if that matters.
Gotcha.
In the losses I had against 7 Deadly Sins, it was glad that my teammates won those rounds to keep us going. Because especially in our first couple rounds, the wins that I had, it was still only 2 of us winning, so I didn't want to run dead cards in my deck. So
For sure.
I'm definitely glad for it. Semifinals, I played against Sora Control for Hololive and won in that matchup. Those are definitely my most fun matchups and probably the most one-sided for this deck. It's because minus soul just doesn't work because you plus too much soul
Gotcha.
from level 0 all the way to the end game. And then finals, had the rematch with the Quints and didn't clutch it out. I wish I could have. That's just how it be.
For sure. All right, so as we are with this deck profile, you know, a lot of people are probably going to be saying, oh, Fujimi got second, maybe like California's weak or whatever. I mean, we're not even from California, but the California players might suck or whatever. Or maybe you just ran hot. What do you have to say to the haters?
It's just really rough when it's like you put a lot of time and work into it, and like I feel like there's a talent and a hard work aspect of when we won in Ontario last year. That was the first tournament we went to ever. We've never been to a locals. We've never been to any other tournament. Our very first time playing people that were not our own teammates, we win a tournament, and it felt like we all have a pretty good history of card games in general. So it's not our first card game, but for Weiss Schwarz it was. And we were like, okay, it might be beginner's luck, you know, whatever. We go to Houston, we bubbled, and now we were definitely humbled of just like, okay, like if we did it on a repeat, sure, then maybe we are really strong and really good at this game. We still think that we were good enough to like obviously win, and to go 10th place doesn't mean you're really a bad player. And I think this tournament just solidifying that again of still never going to locals, never practicing against people that we don't think is that great, or people that don't think will give us the greatest practice. So we kind of just stay to our own and practice with each other. So I kind of had the philosophy of just, I'll play a bad deck. I will admit, Bunko is a bad deck. It's not a good fucking deck. I think if you really want to win, I would not be playing this fucking deck. But I do believe that the 0 is better than most. I think Hololive is probably the best level 0 in the game. If Kaguya never got their nerfs, then they'd probably be up there as well. But the fact that they have any makes them rough. And I think me in Anaheim going 5-2 and pretty much just winning out in 0 every single game. And now again on this tournament of 10 rounds, winning out in 0 on almost every single game except 2 of my Hololive matches. Just kind of proved just like, I think you can put in enough hard work to something that sucks and be a good enough player to do it. And for people that have like mentioned like, oh, well, I've played this deck for this long and I've owned this deck and I don't ever see it. It sucks to say results-based analysis, but if you don't have anything to back up with it, it's really hard.
But also at the same time, if they have, if they have the deck, you're proof that it can work.
You can get second, and if second's not good enough, be a better player and get first. If I was a better player, we would have won. There's probably a slight misplay that I made somewhere in finals where I could have won and I lost the match for my team and we didn't win because I wasn't a good enough player. And I think that's just how it is. If it doesn't matter what deck you play, and if the game's extremely luck-based, then so be it. It doesn't matter what you play, the meta's not real. If there is a meta, and that's defined with things like Quince and Seven Deadly Sins and even Attack on Titan right now, you're going to get player diff by someone with a much fucking worse deck, but a much better player and someone that knows how to deck build really well.
So what you're saying is that if either there's one of two things can be true. Either the game is luck-based and you can win with anything, or the game is not luck-based and is skill-based, and then when Fujimi comes to get second place, it's because you're the better player. And like if you're playing, if it was skill-based, then why didn't all these meta decks beat you?
Yeah, 100%. And like no hate to anybody that we played against. I loved every single match, every single opponent. Our finals opponents were awesome, really fun to talk to. Obviously, it's so sad to lose in finals, but we just sat there for like 30 minutes and just talked, and it was a lot of fun. We were having a great time, and even in semis and quarters, same thing with those opponents of just like, it's just a lot of fun. You like to talk to people that understand how it is. I had a lot of people come up to me after top 8 asking about the list and stuff and really excited, and like it's a nostalgic deck that everybody remembers because it's a collectible deck. So when you see it in competitive and it do well, it's really fucking crazy. So
so I mean, so essentially, the Weiss community is really, fun and like they're, awesome people, but there are people who might, think that they're better than others, and then this happens, and then
Yeah, it definitely, it felt like every good player recognized what I did, and there's a lot of acknowledgement for it. I don't know if I'll play Fujimi again, because I've kind of accomplished what I wanted to. But I think it's players that kind of sit on the sidelines a bit more and just kind of want to talk, didn't really understand it. And that's totally fine. You can definitely have your opinions. And I think I have a lot of strong opinions in the Weiss community in general, but that's just kind of how I feel about the deck. It's not a good deck. I wouldn't even fucking rate it on a tier list. This is the bottom of the fucking bottom with the rest of the other shit decks. I think there's only really 5 decks that matter. And if you're not playing one of those, then you don't want to win as much. And we all went into this tournament agreeing that top 8ing was enough. And getting second was pushing that above and beyond.
For sure. All right. Any shout outs at the end of this?
Shout outs to my teammates, of course, Warren Younger and Yuki. Yuki did great. He definitely carried my slack when I was losing, and he
carried my slack too.
Helped carry your slack when you were losing. So, but
I did not have a good day.
You and I were alternating our losses, so that's what mattered the most. But he did really good. He was a good sport and stuff. I would never play this shit deck if my teammates were not okay with it. If they wanted to win and nothing but to win, I would just play Seven Deadly Sins, Attack on Titan, Quince, and that would be our lineup. But we don't have anything else to prove. We won our regional already. We're kind of doing it for fun, and if we get a win along the way while doing it, that's extra fun.
But watch out when we actually do want to win again.
True. When I show up to singles with Bunko and I win Worlds, who knows? No, I'm just kidding. Never. I won't play fucking Bunko in Worlds. That's not happening. If I get the chance for Worlds, I'm not playing this shit. I don't like the deck that much.
For sure. All right, man. Well, what's next for GCG? Maybe some. Definitely no SpringFest.
No, definitely no SpringFest, and there's none close. Anaheim singles probably go there. I don't know if I'll play Bunko then. I might, if I find a deck that's fun enough, then I'll do it. That's my whole thing with Weiss. It's just, if it's fun, then I'll do it. But if I don't find another one that's fun enough, I might just run back to Bunko.
Bet. All right. Well, I'll see you guys later, and stay tuned for more content in the future, maybe in some other card games besides Weiss. But also you can stay here for Weiss as well.
Honestly.
All right. Peace.